So people are still joining, but I think I can start in the meantime. Welcome everyone to the ANOC Toolbox Sustainability Workshop number 5, the last in the series of 5. We are on one side very sad, this being the last workshop, but I think we can also be proud that we've gone through all the steps, and we can tap us a bit on the shoulder a bit to have made it until the last webinar, but there's still a lot of things to achieve, and especially today when the topic is about communication and reporting, which is one of the key elements as well, especially if we take into account the UNFCCC Sports for Climate Action framework. And just a few housekeeping rules. I mean, after 3 years, I think you're already very familiar with Zoom, but the bottom of the screen at the taskbar, you have a globe icon, and there you can select the languages. So select English, French, or Spanish, as interpretation services are available. Also, if you have any question at any time, you can write in the chat. We will try to answer them either by you taking the floor or by reading out the questions. You can also take the floor by raising your hand. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to Damien. Welcome.
Good morning, guys. I'm assuming everyone can see me and hear me, more importantly. And are we screen sharing? Maybe I don't have the right. Do we have the PowerPoint? Amazing. Cool. So yes, listen, thank you very much for joining this final workshop series today, where we bring it all together and look at how to report on our sustainability progress or program. So we're joined here today with the Toolbox team, Amy Monroe, Isaac, and also Dr. Susie Thompson on the next slide. Changing view. There we are. I knew we were missing. So I think you're familiar with all of us, for those who've been joining this series, but we're also joined by Susie, who is Dr. Susan Thompson, who is one of the leaders in sustainability in sport, as well as being part of the community who helped to actually build the Toolbox platform itself with us. She's been a central figure in the creation of the UNFCCC reporting standards. So we're very happy to have her with us today. And we're also joined again by Ingrid Butler from Butler Consulting, the ANOC team, of course, the National Olympic Committees, yourselves. Some of you will be presenting your own progress in the reporting and communicating that you've been doing over the last periods later in the session. On the next slide, we just highlight again the importance of the standard that we are all aligning to, the UNFCCC Sports for Climate Action, and the principles associated. So these require systemic efforts, climate action, educating, sustainable consumption, and communication. And over the last workshops, we've explored the various tools and resources that are available to help us to achieve these principles and goals. And the reporting stage brings all of this together. So if you've been systematically recording your work along the way in whatever documents you're using, whether they're the Toolbox documents or otherwise, that raw content is going to be directly ready or already compiled in your various work to be ready to be extracted into the final reporting and communication process. So in many cases, you don't need to rewrite new material. You can extract it from the work that you've been already doing along the way. And maybe just to have a look at how that works, we can just go back and have a look at the Toolbox as a platform of tools, and I'm going to hand over to Amy.
Hi guys. Yes, so it's just a reminder. We're now, for those that are here for the first time, a quick recap on the history of the Toolbox. So in 2020, 11th Hour Racing Team founded the Toolbox alongside their community to create an accessible step-by-step set of resources to support organizations to establish a sustainability program. It provides a set of guides, templates, and case studies to walk you through the steps, and it's available for free on the Creative Commons platform based on the ethos that when we share, everyone wins. And it's now available in English, French, Spanish, and soon Portuguese in the next couple of weeks, thanks to the support of Cape Verde NOC and the IOC Olympic Solidarity Fund. So we're exploring some of the tools, so make sure you've registered and downloaded the full set of assets at sustainabilitytoolbox.com. But also remember, this workshop and all the previous workshops are available on YouTube if you want to look back and see any of the content from the previous steps. So these are all the documents that sit within step 8 that we'll be focusing on today. Feel free to drop any questions into the chat as you go. I will be, and Damien will be monitoring the chat, and we'll channel the questions to the right people. And yeah, with that, back over to Isaac.
Thanks, Amy, and yeah, welcome back, everyone. Once again, it's a pleasure to speak to you all this afternoon or morning, wherever you are. And yeah, thanks for all attending our final webinar. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started on our final topic, which is reporting and communication. So the way we can think about this is, in terms of sports, sports thrive because of their audience. Sorry, we're just still on the slide before, Andres. Cheers. So yeah, sports thrive because of their audience. So whether we watch them on TV or attend live events, sport is always played to a crowd. They provide us with excitement, quality time with family and friends, and a chance to unwind after the long working week. People all over the world support their favorite teams and athletes regardless of the sport, and they'll cheer them on to success. Understanding what motivates people to attend or watch these sports events can be really challenging. Every sports stakeholder has different attitudes, needs, and motives. And when developing a strategy and organizing events, it's crucial to consider what will be attractive to visitors, sponsors, and media, and what will ultimately generate revenue based on those factors. Similarly, your sustainability program will also have its own audience. To understand who they are and why they're interested, we must delve deeper and answer some of the following questions. So what makes our sustainability program unique? What does our program do to meet the needs of fans and stakeholders? And why do people consume our sport? And in turn, how does climate advocacy play a role in our reporting and communicating? So it's entwining sport and sustainability to meet your audience's needs. So to get going, let's have a little look at our quick guide. To fully deliver a successful sustainability program, it's important to report and communicate key successes, challenges, and learnings to your team and your stakeholders. This is done by reporting at the end of each cycle, and reporting helps to demonstrate your progress, provide credibility, ensure accountability, and drive continual improvement. Those are our kind of 4 key tenets of reporting. You should define your reporting cycles and align your reports with industry standards, and again, keep your target audience in mind. When reporting, you'll also need to consider your reporting objectives and what it is your stakeholders want to read about. So make sure that you include all relevant details, such as who you are, what you do, your vision, your mission, and your strategy, your stakeholders, your scope, your materiality, and your progress against targets. So we're covering all bases of your sustainability program. Step 8 includes a number of resources. It includes a quick guide, the case studies, the how-to guide, and a template. So these have been, the how-to guides have been represented in the Sustainability Handbook, which was made for this webinar series. And again, if you haven't downloaded it yet, you can find that on the ANOC Sustainability web page. This how-to guide, which you can see enlarged on the right-hand side there, provides detailed guidance on how to structure your report for context and completeness using the format of your existing sustainability plan. It will also help you define which reporting standards or concepts you intend to align with, such as the UN SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. Once your report process is complete, the Toolbox also provides a communications plan template. It's important to periodically keep your stakeholders up to date with your progress on your sustainability objectives and share any achievements you make along the way. So this template will help to sharpen your focus on how best to deliver those messages by creating a communications strategy and a communications plan. In this webinar, however, we would just like to draw our focus to reporting. So I'd like to invite Amy to go into a little bit more detail on the importance of reporting and why we do it. Amy, are you there?
Hi there. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, reporting your work is an opportunity to tell your organization's unique story and to demonstrate progress and be accountable to your stakeholders by showcasing your commitment to operating sustainably. It's a way to organize new and existing data from various departments within your organization and make it accessible to all concerned. If we could go to the next one. The reporting process will allow you to showcase where you stand now and your path towards achieving your objectives. So the end of your reporting cycle establishes clear benchmarks for the start of the next cycle for continual improvement, which is critical for a credible sustainability program. As it relates to the climate action framework, this process will help you pull together all of the information needed to disclose your emissions data as required of all signatories. And if we go to the next one. So the result of good reporting, credibility is created as a result of transparently communicating your progress. And that's reinforced by including opinions from stakeholders following recognized standards and undertaking, where relevant, third-party audits and certifications. And the result is fundamental to building trust between all of you, for good stakeholder relationships. So having evaluated performance, confirmed areas of effectiveness, and then decided on any changes needed, you then have the opportunity to improve. This will likely mean adjusting goals and targets or reassessing resources and updating management systems. And the outcome is likely to be a tangible shift in individual behavior, management focus, and organizational identity. So I think this was a moment where, if Julie Duffus is here, she was going to talk a little to the types of resources and support available on this topic from the IOC.
Yep, I couldn't, Julie sadly could not join us, but if I may, I'll just take the floor very quickly here. So the IOC has different resources to support the NOCs, so either with individual support, setting up workshops, but also some funding through Olympic Solidarity. So the ANOC and the IOC will start working even closer on this to provide, to listen to the NOCs, understand their needs, and to provide further help. So the plans that, for example, the strategy that we're giving here together with the Toolbox can be implemented. So the IOC is ready to give an extra push to support you on this pathway. But we're going to plan additional activities with the IOC, so further workshops and webinars. And as soon as those are structured, we will be communicating them to you. Back to you, I mean.
Nice, thanks, Gustavo. So I think now it's a good time. So Damien introduced Susie earlier, but I'm going to hand over to Susie, who's going to talk a little bit about what are the high-level items that, as we dig into the UNFCCC reporting process, what do we need to achieve? And then we'll go into a little bit more depth, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat as you go, and or raise a hand, and we can direct those questions to Susie as she explains it to us. Thanks, Susie.
Perfect. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Damien. And nice to be part of your session today. just a little, we're literally covering on this, just carbon reporting. That's what Sport for Climate Action is about. So obviously the context that you've just had is your wider sustainability reporting. A couple of things on this. So this is looking at how sport got together and said we should create a standardized way of reporting that we can all talk about the same thing. We all agree the same scope that we will report to, and essentially collectively we as sport can drive change and action, and we are stronger together. We have a louder voice together. So it was creating that framework. Damien mentioned it in what he was talking about earlier. It's critical that when you set up your reporting framework and template, it answers the question you want it to answer. And it's set up and structured in a way that is meaningful to you. I've seen quite often people put data into reporting and and they're externally reporting, but you don't have the data to then be able to actually track how well you're doing and your progress, and maybe even run some scenarios like, well, what would happen if we did this rather than this? So that part of it, and that part of your planning and your management and your monitoring your progress is critical. The point of externally reporting, so that's reporting for you. This, which we're going to look at now, is externally reporting, and is this framework that was put together for sports together to create the same baseline, the same scope within that baseline, an agreement of that. And when we started this, and I was co-chair of the working group, there were 4 working groups set up on measure, reduce and offset, and essentially was the piece which would go into this reporting. It's very
maybe Andre, we could just slide forward one slide just to give a bit of background to
so the reporting, and this is what came out of the report. This is essentially the steps, and the next slides will go through the actual form in more detail, but really looking at what they're looking for and what UNFCCC and Sport for Climate Action and the group is owned and run by sport for sport, is the ethos behind it to really create this common boundary. There are reporting frameworks out there, and the forms that we'll go through and look at are a little clunky sometimes for sport, which takes me back to you measure and you manage what you want to manage, with in mind that actually you want to be part of this bigger Sport for Climate Action, part of this bigger movement, and therefore you might collect some additional bits of data, but fundamentally you work out what's important for you first. Sport for Climate Action is looking at reporting information. It gathers information about your organisation, so NOCs. It asks about the reporting period, generally a year. However, when you're looking at Olympic cycles, we had lots of discussion about, is that a year or is that a 4-year period? So you would be, and we're talking carbon emissions here, looking at tracking on a year-to-year basis, because but recognizing that actually your averages will probably be over an Olympic cycle, for example. So it does depend on the organization itself. It's about you tracking, making progress, and being able to set credible reduction plans because you've used the methodology that you've used. So the reporting period there, obviously with COVID, there was lots of discussion about, was it pre-COVID years or post-COVID years? As we're coming out of that and some kind of normality assumes again, then a lot of the baseline year of people starting now would be 2022, for example, maybe 21, 22. So wherever you've got data, your approach, so how you've approached that, and I know you've gone through various training and programs. I'm not going to go into masses of detail around that, but hopefully you've got on board, like, just start somewhere, and here is where you keep track, and even in your own reporting, keep track of those, the data and things you've got there. Oh, sorry, can we just go back to that? We'll go through this in a minute. So your methodology, your data collection, your emission calculation, it wants to know how you've done that. That's also important for you as you go forward and you improve, and maybe some data looks different to a year before, but you haven't done much different, but you've actually collected different set of data. Or so working out the data is important, and the accuracy of that. It wants to know how you manage climate impacts, so how you manage the impact of climate on your organisation, how you embed that in your business planning and your governance around that. At what level is climate change discussed, agreed, built into your business planning? So it's looking at the climate risk on your business. It looks at the detailed targets and policies that you've got and that you've put in place. It wants to know what you're setting yourself. And then it obviously wants to know your actual, so the report needs to know your actual emissions, the categories that you're reporting on, and how you're reducing to those. It also wants to know, so you will have covered the fact that actually a large chunk of your emissions is going to be in that scope 3, your stakeholders, your suppliers, but equally your athletes, your federations, commercial partners, which bit is your scope, which bit is their scope. But ultimately, the reporting here wants to know how you're addressing that, how you're dealing with that, and what's in and what's out, and how you're working with those organisations to get them on the same carbon journey, climate action journey. The ones at the end are questions around, have you got it verified? Amy just mentioned that about verification. Has an external organisation come in and looked at both your data and your methodology and said, yep, credible, yep, they've got everything in scope they've said, we don't think there's any major emissions there. That looks all credible, authentic, so good to go. And then also whether you report that publicly. And there's a lot of organisations who feel nervous, don't want to, but some of that is around the fact that nobody is reporting the same scope. So what we hope to do with Sport for Climate Action was actually report the same scope and all have general agreement on what that was. So we'll go through, and I won't go in super detail, but if you've got any questions, then just flick up. So the Sport for Climate Action reporting form it's an online form. I recommend you download this, and you can download it in a Word format. You fill it in the Word format, and then you literally upload your questions to it. That will keep a record. It's not as sophisticated to send you back a copy of what you've uploaded. So if you only answer the questions online and upload it, the form has disappeared into the ether. So you want to make sure you keep a copy and then you upload your questions into it. So you put your name in there, the reporting period, we've covered that. It's a generally accepted, it's a year, it doesn't have to be a calendar year, it could be your season. It depends how your finances and how you've structured your reporting. I talked about this, that executive board level oversight for sustainability issues. So it's really looking at where this is embedded in your governance and your highest management level committee. So it's looking at your governance structure. And the idea is that we can start seeing, like, where is it effectively working? Where is climate action effectively working? At what level is it embedded into governance? So the next slide. So really looking at the impact. So this is often missed as well. We're very focused on mitigating our emissions, but we're not so much looking at the impact on the organisation of climate change. What does our world look like in a 1.5 degree, a 2 degree world? Actually, that's really important when you're trying to create the business case, or you're looking at, well, why are we worried about all these carbon emissions? Feels like something way off in the future. We're already seeing the impacts of climate, adverse weather conditions on sport and on our sport. So actually very valid now. If we knew what 1.5 or 2 degree looked like, we would be championing a 50% absolute reduction in carbon emissions at 2030 or 2040 timeline. So that bit absolutely puts in perspective, as well as is that business risk piece on there. It asks if you've got the processes behind there. So these are very much questions around your business and how you engage, if you engage with suppliers. So how you manage it, the governance structure behind your management of climate and carbon emissions.
Hey, Susie, I think just to give you, this is amazing, thank you. And just want to remind everyone, we really want to be interactive here, make the most of Susie's presence and everyone else in the call. So please feel free to jump into the chat here, but I'm going to kind of get the ball rolling. This point about projecting forward, because we're talking about measurement, measuring against our targets, reporting at the end of the year. But obviously, what you're talking about here is actually projecting forward beyond those initial first kind of baseline years to what you think you can achieve in the future. That's like really critical, really, isn't it? Because otherwise we're just measuring, and there's no improvement. We need to project and we need to readjust our targets.
Yeah, and sport. So sport for climate action. Sorry, I should have said this in the beginning. I'm not sure if you covered this before. Sport for climate action, to become a signatory, you sign up and become part of the framework. There are two critical parts. One is that you commit to a 50% absolute reduction in your carbon emissions by 2030, and you commit to net zero by 2040. Those two targets, those two bits of information data are aligned with the UN's race to zero. They align with what science is saying. This is a 1.5 degree world. So we also talk about science-based targets. Setting those two targets of a 50% reduction and the net zero by 2040 are aligned to that 1.5 degree world. So working out what your world looks like in 1.5 degrees or what your world looks like in 2 degrees is going to put that all into perspective. But as Damien's just said, having the baseline is one thing, having the second baseline is another thing, and part of the framework within 6 months of reporting, you would be expected to be able to send in your carbon reduction plan as well. The framework is evolving at the moment. The framework is developing and sports are driving that forward, and some are obviously further ahead than others. But reporting is one thing, but then setting out this roadmap to 2030. So you would be expected to be able to say what those reduction plans is. Transition. So it's some of it is about thinking differently how you run a business, doing less. Some of it is about decarbonising. So you might do the same activity, but it's decarbonised. You can switch energy, for example, to renewable energy sources. So whatever those measures are that you've identified, but you've mapped that out over a period, and you're expected to report that and project that forward. And then that becomes your baseline to work forward. I think it's worth saying here as well, and I'm not sure if you've covered this, it is really hard to do, but globally and as sport, we can make people realize actually it is hard, but we're going to give it a really good go, and actually collectively together we can share what's worked and what doesn't work, and we can really create a solid movement together. And I think that's really important. We shouldn't shy away from it, and we shouldn't go like, oh, I'm not going to set that target or sign it because I'm not sure I can deliver it. Fundamentally, as a group of nations or organizations, we have to make the effort. We have to try and make those steps. So the technology's out there, and it's harnessing that and pulling it all together. So this is really gathering that information at the back of how you manage and how you monitor, not just your measuring it, but how you're actually going to manage these things going forward and these reduction plans going forward. And then,
Susie, so sorry to interrupt. Thank you for I got a note from the interpreters, from the interpreters, because we're interpreting in French and Spanish. If you could speak a bit slower to make their work a bit easier. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll try to. I get too excited, so I'll definitely try. So apologies if there's anything that people have missed and want to ask the question later, feel free to ask me or through Damien and Amy. Absolutely fine, and I'll endeavour to get back and answer that. So it's essentially, it's about how you manage that from a governance internal aspects. So that's these first parts of this. If we move on to the next one. Do you measure? So we've got information here about the reporting year, what standard and protocol or methodology are you using? So typically greenhouse gas protocol, corporate accounting standard is pretty standard. There are others that you can select from. They want to know what method you've used, where your emission coefficients has come from, to really be able to look at if there are significant differences in approach or methodology, whether or not you...
I might just jump in here, Susie. I mean, I'd imagine, again, please, if anyone has questions as we go through these slides, jump in. But just on this point, because this obviously becomes quite complex, it's complicated. I mean, this is a professional scope of work. And so for a small organization, you may be endeavoring to do this internally, and tools like the Toolbox provide tools to allow you to, the average user to get into this topic. But it also might be for the bigger organizations, you might be scoping this out to a consultancy firm. And so there's there's different ways to go about this carbon accounting process. Is there any comments you want to add to that?
Me add, or anyone? Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we really tried to do and advise the UN was make it speak in a language sport speaks, and unfortunately it has come back as it is written in greenhouse gas protocol UN speak. Like you know, to interpret this actually takes a bit of understanding. I think there's a really valid advice back to the framework would be, make this really simple. Which ones of these would you just not need to respond to, for example? I mean, some of it is reasonably easy. No, you don't make it publicly available, or is it third party verified, yes or no? It could be that amongst yourselves as ANOC, actually you have somebody who can help assure and look at all of the reports that are coming in and say, yep, they've got it all, you've got all the bits in. Could be that you could create some assurance amongst yourselves and collectively do that. The next slide, I think the next slide asks you about which greenhouse gases are included in your emissions. I think typically, if you just go to the next slide, these sorts of questions here, like carbon dioxide, methane, that's typically you would be using a single coefficient that where you have CO2 and a little e means equivalent, and that has bundled all these gases up together. So some of this is making it harder than it needs to be, which goes back to my first comment, is structure your reporting and your carbon footprinting in a way that is really relevant to you. And then hopefully we can get to the stage where actually it translates then into, or there's a sort of translation, if you like, into like this question here on which greenhouse gases. Yeah, we're looking at CO2. That's what you're measuring. And that's fine. And then when you get down to the scope 3, so it asks you what's in your scope 1, what's in your scope 2, and what's in your scope 3, for example. If we just go to the next slide, yep, here you go. It goes through each of these. It wants the results. Again, there is a translation piece needed between what is purchased goods and services, capital goods, upstream, downstream. Some will fit your business, some will not, and will need a bit of interpreting. Once you've worked out that actually that line item in my carbon emission inventory goes in this box, then you're fine. But there is a bit of hand-holding, and that could be something that ANOC or the IOC could help with, just making sure that this form, there's a translation with what you're likely to be measuring and looking at and what's in this form. So it goes through scope 3 is obviously the bigger chunks in here. So if we keep going through.
Just one interruption again, Susie. I think Kari has a question, or he has a hand raised. I don't know if it was
Yeah. I was thinking about just as Damien were talking about earlier. I'm working with the NOC in Iceland, a really small association, only 20 people on the staff. Looking at the toolbox, it appears to be for a bigger organization. So I was merely wondering, so we won't be in the exactly same place after 2 years. On what things should we focus on in the beginning? Because if we were to grasp all the tools, all the stuff that we could start with, I fear that we would end up being on a place that we're overwhelmed. Let's go back and think about it for another 2 years. So if we were to start somewhere, what would you advise us to set upfront to begin with?
Could I start with the first answer and then maybe hand it back to Susie? So the toolbox is actually, you know, it really is a framework which lays out a robust approach A to Z for any organization of any size in terms of designing, establishing, implementing, and then finally reporting on sustainability programs. So it could be for a family at one end, a small SME, or a slightly bigger organization like yourselves, or indeed a corporate. In actual fact, most users are of the SAB size. But your question really is, it's spot on, right? I mean, we're always challenged with where to start. And maybe I'll, at this stage, pass it back to Susie, because I actually had the same point here. What's this challenge of detail versus time and resources available? How exact do we need to get do we need to be perfect to start? Or do we just throw our hands up and kind of go out the back door? I think, at the end of the day, we have to be comfortable to start somewhere. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to miss targets. It's just not okay not to start. So maybe I'll just hand back to Susie, where you would suggest, what are the key elements for an NOC like Iceland?
In terms of sustainability in general, just in carbon?
In general, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always think it's a bit like unscrambling the bowl of spaghetti, isn't it? And making sense of, because you're right, it's overwhelming to start with. And it's sitting down and looking first at like, what do we do as an organization? And then, okay, and what's really important for us? If you're in Iceland, probably climate, carbon emissions are, you're in the thick of the sort of climate piece story, maybe wrong, but
travel, right? I mean, you've got to get off the island to compete.
So carbon emissions, and as an organization, your big impact, whether you'll have a small organization office or something. So to always start in carbon would be your actual stuff in your the energy that you consume, the waste that you produce in your own direct operations in terms of environmental, we're talking about here. And then you look at what else are you doing? And Damien just said, travel, you will all be traveling. So your sort of scope 1 and 2, your energy consumption and your travel would be a minimum looking at what you're doing. And then how can you do that? How can you do that efficiently? Where can you do it? If you get your house in order in terms of your own environmental management, then you can start looking at like, okay, how can we now be advocates and work with our wider stakeholders, partners, suppliers? But like Damien said, start somewhere. Just look at your office, look around the office, and start there, and then take the next step. Okay, well, where are we going? Right, how are we getting there? And just start. You just start small. You start somewhere, and you don't have to have the accurate data to start with. The point is just start somewhere. So if you're measuring carbon emissions, for example, on here, do you have energy, you know, are you paying an energy bill? Are you paying an electricity bill? Are you paying a waste contractor? So you will be measuring through your finance, the fact that you're spending money, you will be able to pull out your kilowatt hours or how much you spent. And you can translate that into carbon. You will be able to look at like, okay, we're traveling, we're spending so much on flights, so much on domestic travel. There is basic data in that, the fact that you'll be managing it from a financial point of view. Where you don't know the quantity, you can then just use financial data. So you just start with what's immediate and in your direct immediate control, and that you look around and go, this feels really important to us. It probably is important then.
Yeah,
Thanks,
if I may, sorry. I mean, I think it's a good time to also, I mean, we understand the position of smaller NOCs like Iceland, but it's important to highlight to all those here that the IOC has a big structure behind to support small organizations who are starting this process. Julie was finally able to join us in the end. We appreciate that. So if we can give her the floor for a little bit and she can explain a little bit of what the IOC is already offering to the NOCs and the support that is planned, I think it's a good opportunity.
Hi, sorry,
Yeah.
Susie, and hello. I feel as though I've like gone bombarded your presentation halfway through it.
Always lovely to see you, Julie.
You too. Anyway, I guess now is a right time. Should I do it without the slides? I'll just chat.
Yeah, can you
so
just go ahead? Yeah.
Basically, we do have a plan and a support system in place for all NOCs actually, but in particular the smaller NOCs, because we completely understand your capacity and resources issue. So together with Olympic Solidarity, we've come up with a program for you to get started. It's coupled with one-to-one technical support, but also the ability to join certain workshops, and then Olympic Solidarity funding will come in and actually give you money to do such projects and get in staff to help you do that. So this is only to say that you're not on your own in this, and we are here to support you, and I guess reach out, because all of this that Susie's going through, we will support you through this. So we're not expecting you to do it on your own. And just to also say that Gustavo and I are planning to come together and create a whole program for NOCs for the rest of the year. So you'll also get notice on that as well. So that's it really. All I wanted to say was that you're not alone, reach out, and there is specific funding available to all NOCs, in particular sustainability and in carbon calculation.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Amazing, guys. We're just a little backed up on time, and so we have an opportunity here just to bring in Cabo Verde because they have a couple of minutes, and maybe we can come back to Susie just to complete the document. Does that work? Is the Cabo Verde team there?
I think Damien, we've still got 5 minutes.
Do we? Okay, we're good. Good to go then, Susie. Sorry.
I don't know if
fine.
Sophia has a question. Sorry.
Yeah, if I may. We are going through this report model you're showing us. I was trying to find it in the Sports for Climate Action Framework online website, but I'm not sure if
Probably the easiest is for it to be circulated with, I don't know how you circulate, and these, I'm not sure it's on, I would hope it's on the website. Might
because
not
they
be.
said we should download it and then fill it and then upload it.
Yeah.
If not,
Not
we can
sending by email, but uploading.
Do you know, Julie, are you still there?
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it is available, because I have a feeling, Susie, that they're going to relook at tweaking a few of the questions. And Sophia, hello, by the way, you don't have to complete this until September. So don't stress too much about it. I would wait probably until we get the formal communication with the new form from the UN on it. But I mean, you could use this one as a basis so that you know what's kind of coming.
Okay, but we signed the framework at May 23rd last year. So are we obliged to report until 23rd April this year, or we can report until September?
You can report until September is when I think it opens. So you can report in April if you want to, but the cutoff date is September to have the baseline, your baseline up and reported, and your reduction strategy as well.
Even if September is a little bit more than 1 year after.
I think you're meant to report, you're right, Sophia, I think you are meant to report within a year.
Yeah, because I signed in May 2022. So in May 2023, it will be 1 year. So I'm not sure if I have to report it before May.
Well, I understand
is that we'll check that
to other people over the last couple of weeks, but I just wait. I think wait, because we're all kind of guessing a bit. Let's wait for UNFCCC to actually say what we have to do.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your help. Thanks.
And then, the other thing, and it goes back to the point of the scale and the rest of it, is like, make sure you're reporting that is relevant to you. And where it's like here, it says it's not relevant. We've not calculated it because we've looked at it and it's not relevant to us. That's absolutely valid answer. I have to put something in every box. If that isn't how you've reported or collected your data, then that's fine. The interest is where you are, how you're managing it, and actually really the reduction piece going on. So we don't need to go through these boxes. We can skip forward a few slides if we go to.
I do think now we may be running a little bit over time. Would it be possible to bring in Cabo Verde NOC, and then perhaps we can come back to the end and facilitate some more questions at the end?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we do have some NOCs who are here today to speak a little bit about how they have undergone their reporting practices. So I believe we have Maria on the call, or Francisco, and they will give a small presentation about what they've been doing to report and communicate about their sustainability plans. So if you're there, Maria.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Raul. I'm sorry, just because the time zone changed, because of it used to be 2 hours and now it became to 1 hour. Our Olympic Committee representative is thinking that it will be in 1 hour later. Can you give us can you continue with the schedule, and once it comes online, I will notify you? Is that possible?
Yes, that is possible. I'm not sure we'll be running for another hour, but
No. I will try to contact him now, because the time zone changed. It used to be 2 hours difference. Now it's just 1 hour difference. So he's thinking that it will be in 1 hour. I will enter in contact with him, and I will come back to you. Okay. Give me just a couple of minutes. You guys can continue, and I will let you know. Sorry for the inconvenience. Huh?
No worries. No worries. In that case, perhaps we should continue for a little bit more about UNFCCC reporting, and then we can come to Denmark NOC and hear from them on how they've reported.
If you just want to, I mean, it essentially asks for your reduction plan, what you're doing, what actions you've identified in your reduction plan. And then it asks you information about whether you have offset or are offsetting, and whether or not those are verified offsets. So it's looking at gathering that information, which hopefully would all be part of your overall carbon climate action plan as well. It may be that you haven't, and as Julie said, there is advice, guidance out there. There are schemes that the IOC run and work with, and that maybe you can become part of, or ANOC together. You look at what's credible, relevant to you guys as a group, or it might be something that's of sort of nationally important and relevant to you as well. The other piece that it's looking at, because in the framework, it's not just about the governance, setting the targets, the measurement and the reduction plan and the offsetting. It is about how you engage your stakeholders from the procurement, the supply chain in that delivery piece, but also how you engage and become advocates for change and for climate action. And it's looking at who you are engaging in that space as well. So if we just go to the last slide, probably here. So looking at whether you've got athlete ambassadors, whether you're promoting this on your website page. So how are you operating and becoming an advocate? So those are the sort of sections, if you like, of the framework, the governance structure, the setting the target, committing to that, to the measuring reduction plan, that to 2030 timeline of reductions. The expectation is you carry on reducing up to 2040, but the offset mitigation compensation plan is in place by 2040. So that's the do piece, the operational piece, and then how you engage with your suppliers, your wider stakeholders, and then how you are advocates for the framework and for change. So that's in a nutshell, and this report, and hopefully it will become a bit more user-friendly and accessible, but obviously that's something that you know, that you as a group can help each other, and Julie IOC can also help translate that into a format that's useful and usable for you.
Amazing, Susie. That's a great tour of the document, and of course we can just reach out directly to the UNFCCC team for those who haven't seen this document yet. Great feedback, and a really good point there from Iceland with regards to, you know, the challenge of starting versus kind of the ideal. And I know Lenny has to go, but thanks for that question. Is there anyone else online? Amazing. We have Dr. Susie Thompson, and we've got Julie Duffus. So we've got everyone here online that you need to speak to. So any questions from your side, Gustavo or Andres? I don't see anything else in the chat. Isaac or Amy, do you guys maybe have some questions just to dig into this a little bit more before we move on?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I remember at the beginning you were making sort of important distinction between the external reporting and internal reporting. I was wondering if, you know, if NOCs have sort of sector specific targets that they might include in their internal reporting, are there any mechanisms for feedback on either the UNFCCC report or their internal reports? Is there any mechanisms for feedback from UNFCCC for them to make further reductions on climate impact?
Yeah, the aspiration was that the framework, and it is in development, it is in early stages, and it is a collaboration of sport. But the idea was that there would be feedback, probably not on an individual basis, but there would be feedback and a kind of collective picture, if you like, of where sport was and what sport was doing. There are definitely opportunities, and there have been webinars and events where collectively knowledge has been shared. I think we're probably needing to move, and sport probably needs to take more ownership of the framework now and say, actually, you know, like you're doing now, and like you've started and said, actually, hold on, we are a group of organisations which, you know, have come together to actually look at this together. Carry on and share your experiences between you, and use the framework and the as a way of comparing. And you could have a slimmed down version, or you could use what was going here to say, actually, how are we all benchmarking? And it's not a case of who's doing better, because fundamentally, we want everybody to be able to take action and to feel like they're making progress and to help and support each other. So, you know, and as a collective, your voice in terms of this piece, the advocacy piece that we see here, will be so much stronger. So, you know, you could work with your sports as well as together as NOC. So does that answer the question? No, I went off on a tangent.
Yeah, no,
so.
no, definitely. It's a good picture to paint that, you know, I think the feedback comes in a collective style and you get feedbacks from different voices and different places. I think we, you know, we all come at this from different angles as well. You know, it's different for every, the application of this is different for every NOC. So it's interesting to hear how different ones tackle it. And I think that's where the real gems are. So yeah.
There's it's a very open framework as well. I mean, there's you know, from the creation phase with the group that Susie's been involved with down through the working groups, there's a lot of opportunity for all of the signatories to get involved. That's been part of a range of workshops and working sessions that have been going on, including questionnaires that have come in periodically as well. But I love Susie's suggestion that, you know, maybe, you know, ANOC and the group of NOCs can actually, you know, set up a kind of centralized service that that would actually help to standardize at a certain level this process for this group. And as Isaac, you were saying, sharing those lessons across the across that platform. So nice one. I don't know if there's any other questions here, but maybe it's an opportunity to come back to you, Isaac, and I'm sure we've got another opportunity for questions later on. We'll come back to Susie for sure.
For sure, brilliant, yeah, and yeah, again, thank you, Susie, for participating in this part of the webinar. You know, I'm sure I speak for everyone when we say that, you know, your presence speaking to these reporting standards is incredibly valuable, and, you know, we look forward to continuing our communication with you as we support these NOCs through delivering their strategies. So, as I said before, you know, we are about to delve a little bit into some of the actions that other NOCs have taken. As we come to the end of this, you know, this step, we have come to the end of the Toolbox process, but that doesn't mean that we are finished with our support. Could you pop on the next slide, please, Andres? Thank you. So, yeah, of course, we understand the benefits of seeing real-world application. So we've been getting in touch with a few NOCs who have shown to ANOC and the IOC that they've demonstrated best practice. And we've reached out to a few of them today and asked them to produce some slides and tell you a little bit about how they came to do their sustainability program. So to start with, I think as we have a little bit of a delay from Cabo Verde, I would like to invite Lass from Denmark to present. And perhaps, Andres, if you could skip a few slides forward, we can go with Denmark first and then go back to Cabo Verde afterwards. So again, if you have any questions for them, please pop them in the chat or keep them in mind and raise your hand afterwards. And we'll again initiate that question and answer session for all the participants of this webinar today. Over to you, Lass.
Cheers. Thank you, Isaac. And thank you for letting me on. I don't see myself as a role model, us as a role model, but we try to do the best we can. So yeah, my name is Lasse Lyck. I work as a public affairs officer at the NOC and Sports Confederation of Denmark. I will briefly highlight 6 important tasks for us on our journey on working sustainability in sport. First slide, please. Yes. So the first thing, this might sound strange, but I will first just highlight the importance of doing something positive for the climate and doing it right now. We really need to do something right now. We, of course, must be structured. We have to do reporting, but it shouldn't be a blockade for doing something. So just my plea, say, do not fear greenwashing, have respect for greenwashing, and don't think you have to do everything at once. Start somewhere where you're inspired and where you have the energy to do something. So do something and be transparent about it. So yeah, next slide, please. So the first step on our journey was to get a clear mandate, both from our board, but also from our 62 national federations. Next slide. In our policy program, it is now stated that we have a clear responsibility for reducing our carbon footprint and also promoting environmental sustainability. That is crucial for us, that we have this mandate to work on. So next slide, please. Our second task, of course, was to sign the Sports for Climate Action Framework. Maybe not due to the activities, but more important was it internally. Because we committed ourselves and the board to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% in 2030, plus a lot of other things. Next slide. Same slide, sorry. The next step was to secure a carbon footprint report as a baseline, as you just told about before. This has been really important for us to kind of highlight where we have some obligations, and also gave us some crucial insights into our carbon footprint. Lastly, on the fourth thing here, we have a lot of ambitions for the reduction of the carbon footprint from all our 9,000 clubs, the whole sports sector in Denmark. But an area where we directly can change it is how we organize sports events in Denmark. So therefore, next slide, please. We have, we have right now been working on some principles for our events that we do, but also some concrete actions on the 3 big national events that we held every year. We have also made a few guides and a few inspiration for all event organizers in Denmark. But one step is inspiration for all the clubs, but another thing is, where can you change something in your work? Next slide, please. An important role for us is to mobilize to support our 62 national federations. So we have actually created now just our own kind of framework or certificate for our national sports federations. We just finished it last week, so now they're able to apply for this new certificate. Our hope is that the certificate and the activities linked to it will kind of stimulate to more actions towards environmental sustainability, but also as an internal focus for the national sports federations. And then finally, like I said before, our ambitions are not just towards reducing our own carbon footprint, but also for the local clubs. So we've begun now making inspiration for local clubs, but also through the national federations of inspiring and engaging the local clubs. Next slide, please. And for us, this is just crucial, because it is only through them that the 9,000 sports clubs and the 1.9 million members in Denmark, that we can become a broad movement towards environmental sustainability in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a really interesting presentation about your sustainability program. I think, what really stood out to me was the idea of, inspiration for the clubs and federations under Denmark NOC. I think that definitely hits Principle 5, advocating for climate action and things like that. I wonder if anybody has any questions to expand on a little bit.
I've actually got one, Isaac, if that's all right. And it's actually a question, I think, for Lasse and then maybe Julie as well. Because actually, as you talked about, I mean, it's really amazing. Well done to you, and for starting and for actually getting quite a long way down the line. And you've gone beyond just, of course, your own organization and offices, because you're talking about certification of your sports, federations and groups, sustainable events. So I wonder kind of, how did you draw the scope for your NOC and decide what you owned and what other organizations owned? So I'd be really interested to, if you could kind of share how you went about that, and then maybe we could also get some input from Susie on that, because it's something that comes up all of the time. What am I responsible for, and what do I believe that others should be responsible for? So first question to Lasse, and the same question to Susie.
Good question. So concerning our baseline report, it was pretty simple. We unfortunately also own a hotel here in the house, so we had to include that. So I know a lot about hotels now and how you do more sustainable hotels. That was not a part of my job description, but now it is. So for us, it's ownership. So what we can change here is definitely the house. It also showed the reduction plan and then the baseline report that I think around 60% of our carbon footprint was due to the house here. And of course, transportation was on top of that. So in that way, it's pretty simple, but it's really, really difficult to reduce it to 50%. I come from a world.
So when you say ownership there, that's kind of financial control, something that yeah, right, okay.
Yes, but also operational, of course, both things here. So we couldn't take it away. Unfortunately, it would be easier maybe if we could, but it's a part of it, and that's really interesting. And then just another thing, I come from public affairs, so that's what I work with. So we can do things here, but the interesting thing is that all our 9,000 clubs, well, maybe 80%, 70% of them, they use sports facilities which are operated and owned by the municipalities. So if we really have to reduce the complete carbon footprint from our sports clubs, we have to do it through the municipalities. So that's our biggest task. It's actually the political work if we in the end actually want to reduce the carbon footprint from the sports sector in Denmark.
So in that case, you're describing something which actually is out of your direct control and it's more in your sphere of influence. So you wouldn't be reporting on that, but you would be reporting how you influence and extend your influence to the broader group. Is that right?
Yeah, we would probably report it, but we can't really, it's difficult for us and also the municipalities to measure it. But it's just, it's a big part of our job description and what we do. Because in the end, we really want to reduce the carbon footprint, not just from this house and how we travel, but from the 9,000 clubs.
Amazing. Susie, could you kind of dig into this a little bit more, because it's such an important topic, right? Drawing the boundaries and understanding what we own, but more importantly, what we can get our arms around in terms of influence.
Yeah, and so often what I would start doing is kind of almost creating a tree of, you know, an org chart of the organization in the middle. And then you start building out the arms. You'll have, you know, maybe athlete programs. You'll have your own headquarters and operations and attend meetings and do stuff. And maybe there's coaching and a technical official. So the various programs. And then you've got the influence and the areas, and if you map out everything that you do, you touch, you'll start being able to see like, well, that's definitely us. That's, oh, I'm not quite sure that actually that, and then start seeing where these collaboration points are. And maybe I'm a visual person and that's just the way it works. But I think setting it out, and it can be, you know, reasonably high level, but that will also identify, to Lars's point, is like, where's your big opportunity? And, you know, if we're in sport, the big opportunity is using the athletes to inspire and create the stories. So we probably don't, you might have some, you will have some as National Olympic committees, you will be spending some travel, you'll be giving grants to athletes and things, or paying for some of the travel. So you take some of that hit, but actually the biggest opportunity then is the, you know, what they say, getting them on board with your message, and getting them to drive that behavior change. There will be some opportunity to work with your suppliers, and depending on which sports, with the suppliers and the technology piece. And there's some really good projects going in around, you know, life cycle assessments and end of life of those types, plus, you know, the manufacturing and the processing and how we use materials. So if you map out, you'll then start being able to say, well, that's definitely us. We can collaborate really well on that, and actually together we can really drive change. That's a bit of influence, because actually, you know, and the influence piece could either be through changing hearts and minds, but you're in your control. You've got contracts where you can, you know, with suppliers, that's actually your control, what you're spending your money on. And even grant giving and that side, you can put requirements on that. So there's probably more in your direct control than people may think.
What I'm hearing, Susie, is there, and last is you kind of map out all of the stakeholders, the scope of the various operations, and then you kind of look at this through two lenses. One is your financial control. If I'm paying for it, I kind of own it, right? And the other way of looking at this through another lens is, you know, operational control in terms of, you know, if there's a contract which I'm involved with, then I have, you know, I've legal control over this process. And so there are two different protocols or two different lenses that we use to define the scope of our program.
And I think
amazing.
On following on that as well, Damien, if you take the sport away, would that impact happen? So if you take away your part of it, would that impact happen? And then if you can say like, no, it wouldn't have happened, then actually you're responsible. At least measure it until you can get someone else to take responsibility, because there might be a supplier or an athlete or a team who, or a governing body or some other part of the overall picture who takes responsibility. But you need, your job then is getting them to realise and getting on the same journey and taking responsibility for that part of the jigsaw.
Oh, I like that. So you're suggesting you would measure even things that you would perceive outside of your ownership, but you would measure anyway, because so then at least you can kind of showcase, you know, someone needs to take direct ownership for this. We believe it's the municipality because they're running this event, as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Thanks, guys. Really comprehensive answers. I don't know if there's anyone else, or Isaac, is it time to move on?
Yeah, I mean, if there's no further questions for now, we can move on to just a small presentation about one of our new collaborations with Australia NOC, just while we wait to see if there's any other presentation. So today we were going to have a presentation from Warwick Waters, but unfortunately he couldn't be with us. He's the lead for Australia NOC. But as I say, we wanted to tell you a little bit about this new project. So in 2020, Australia NOC signed the Sports for Climate Action Pledge, and that was their first commitment to shifting towards a more sustainable operating model. Now they want to extend that sustainable transition support over the period of a year to around 10 or 15 federations that have shown interest in a pilot project with the Toolbox. So this project will see federations sign up to the Sports for Climate Action Pledge, and they will use the Toolbox to create sustainability strategies. So far, we've had support and engagement from lots of different collaborators, including Julie, and of course some Olympic Solidarity funding has been signposted for this project. So the reason we want to tell you about this today is because if delivering a revised format of our sustainability program workshops, if you wanted to have a revised format delivered to your federations, and if that sounds good, you can get in touch with us, of course, through info at sustainabilitytoolbox.com. And we're already looking forward to expanding this collaboration to all the ANOC federations, and including the wider oceanic network, hoping to encompass some of the oceanic federations as well. So with that, you know, I think we've dug into a bit of a Q&A. I'm wondering if Cabo Verde are ready to present their slides now. I'm not sure if we still have someone from Cabo Verde on the call.
Yeah, I think we go ahead, Isaac.
Okay, cool. So in that case, you know, this is sort of leaves us the space for any further questions. Of course, like we say, we have Susie Thompson still on the call. And if there's any further questions you have about reporting or any communication of your sustainability plan, while we wait for Cape Verde, of course, it'd be great to hear which questions you have. If there's anyone on the call.
I have a question for Susie.
Cool.
This is Michael, NOC from Sweden. We have also just done our first calculations for the carbon emissions. And in the greenhouse gas protocol, you should choose between finance or operational control, or can you do both?
You can do both. You can. It's just about, and I think it goes back to the point of what can you measure, and what information and data have you got, and then just be really clear and transparent about how you're measuring bits. So if you map out, as I said, if you draw out and you map out what your organization looks like, and the starting point is, here's, you know, in our operational direct control, but actually here's our wider piece and we're funding these bits, so that's financial. There may be bits that you can include in there. How you actually measure it will become harder the further you get from your direct control, and then you will be using financial data to manage some of that. So, but knowing the size of the impact in just as a, like, I think that's probably twice as big as this, is going to help you prioritize where to spend your energy and your activity. And I think that's the importance of looking at the big picture to do that, to enable and to do that. So I am a bit of a fan of hybrid measurement and looking at as big a picture as you can, and then being really clear about this year or for the next 2 years, that's what we're looking at, and we're going to get to that bit later, but just be really clear, but have the big picture set out at first.
I love that, Susie. I have a comment on that actually. When we started way back in 2017, our accounting process, we had no idea, what were going to be the big items. We knew that as an international sports team, that travel was going to be a huge one, as was shipping. But we'd no idea. We even had a look at digital footprint, remote working more recently, especially during the COVID years. Electricity, of course, is typically a big one, scope 2. Actually, when we started looking at it, we realized that as an organization that doesn't own an infrastructure, electricity was actually really, really low. So it wasn't one of our main priorities, but travel, shipping were. We actually found the digital footprint, because we do a lot of design using supercomputers, came in at 2%. And so, as Susie says, I think initially you could probably, if you've got the scope, kind of, have a look at everything. And then kind of fairly quickly you kind of say, well, listen, that's underneath 1%. And there's not too many other 1%, and we're just going to focus on those big ticket items. But the spend is a really interesting lens. And when we go through the greenhouse gas protocol, it gives factors for shipping and for air travel and train travel, etc. But where we spend is typically, for most organizations, more than 50% of the footprint. And so that requires a slightly different way of doing carbon accounting. But that's, maybe many organizations aren't quite there yet, but understanding where you're spending your money, and there is a way of calculating carbon footprint per spend, per type of product or service that you've purchased. Certainly encourage organizations that are further down the track to start looking at those scope 3 spends and they'll surprise you for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really key to note as well, just moving back to sort of when we were talking about conceptualizing, what your inventory is, what your scope is of your sustainability plan. It's steps 1 and 2 of the toolbox process that can really help you do that. The resources there really help you as a team go through that process and decide, what it is that your organization does and how you're going to go down the path of monitoring your impacts and reducing them effectively. Do we have any more questions for Susie or Damien or Lass or any of the participants of today's webinar?
For Mikhail, actually, can you just describe the process, because it's always a challenge, right? Have you a dedicated person and resources to undertake the carbon accounting process? And of course, we're focusing an awful lot on carbon here, and when we think about reporting it's really everything else as well. But have you done that internally, Mikhail, or have you outsourced that to a consultancy firm, or have you used any of the IOC resources or otherwise to achieve that? How are you guys going about that?
Yeah, Damien, I think it's a mix. I have done a lot of the data collection, and we are renting our office. So in scope 1, we don't have as much emissions, and not as much in scope 2 as well. So the scope 3 will be very important for us. And I agree with Suze, it's now when you're digging into it, it's more important that you have a broader look on it and try to take as much responsibility as possible, because if you just scope out everything, it's someone else's responsibility. You will lose track on where you should put your effort to reduce your carbon emissions in the end, even though it's not on your scope. I had a discussion with Julie regarding the Olympics, to travel to and from the Olympics. It's on the organizing committee to measure the emissions for the team. And I'm like, okay, but we are selecting the team. We could select 2 or 200 to go there. So in some sort of way, we are also responsible for how many are going. So it's a dilemma, but those kinds of questions we have to answer. And even though if it's double calculated or not, I think it's better to do the calculation on both sides, so we can, on our side, try to see how can we reduce this in some way. So, yeah. But I think also it's important to be involved in the process and be close, because then you also learn a lot, and you can also see what is driving the emissions and how you can then take it to your own NOC and then have discussions around it. If it's only an external part, it gets not as so familiar and maybe not as good impact on the own organization. That is my picture.
Amazing. I love the idea again of getting, as an organization, however broad you design your scope, it's still a finite amount that will just change from one year to the next. But the opportunity, especially through our supply chain, is to get our arm around much, much more. And so what you're both describing is mapping out the broader scope, just showing the full footprint, taking responsibility for a certain part, and maybe in certain cases highlighting, listen, this footprint is here and no one has taken ownership for this yet. Nice one, Mikhail, thank you. And sorry, just wasn't clear to me, so you're doing a lot in-house, but does that mean you have also, in terms of data collection, have you outsourced the actual accounting process then, or do you do that yourself as well?
Yeah, we have an external part helping us with the calculations, and the reason for that is probably that I'm an auditor in my former life, and I would like to have exactly the right figures, but the emissions calculations I have learned is not an exact measure, but you have to have the emissions factors that are right, or as right as possible. And at the first stage, I think it's appropriate to use experts to get the guidance, and then maybe when you see when the calculations process are going forth, you notice that you can find the same emissions factors on different sites. I had a discussion with ANOC also earlier around this, and I now accepted that it's not an exact measure, but the important is to do the measure so you can handle it and so you can do something about it. Like, only if you do it the same way year after year, then you can also measure and reduce and have a plan for how to do it.
Thank you. Isaac, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for your contributions there in the Q&A. I think, you know, we've covered quite a lot today, and I think at this juncture it's time to close up and just go over the objectives and the points that we've learned today, and then we'll let you go with our survey. So for the final time, let's go over what we've looked at today. So we have seen how the Toolbox, step 8, can support delivery against the Sports for Climate Action commitments, particularly step 5, of course. We've brought together progress on our sustainability plan to deliver transparent communication with our stakeholders. We should now know how to, or briefly know where to access this communications plan to build an appropriate sustainability voice. We understand the requirements of Sports for Climate Action reporting, and we have reviewed the UNFCCC template, and we have a clear understanding of how to use the how-to guide to support sustainability report building for external purposes in line with our existing internal formats. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation in these webinars. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you every month and guide you through the Toolbox process. Thank you again to Andres, Gustavo, and Manuela. And while this workshop series is complete, of course, you can always receive one-to-ones from me from the info@sustainabilitytoolbox.com address. And yeah, thanks again. And I will leave Damien to wrap up on this final slide.
Yeah, amazing work, Isaac, and Andres, Gustavo, Amy, Ingrid, and Susie today. You know, it's been really, really valuable from our side for sure to meet you all, and I hope that it's helped in some way to move all of you and us also along the sustainability path. We're here for a long time and a good time, hopefully. Yeah, Isaac's available for more ongoing one-to-ones. That's part of the Toolbox service, especially when you sign up. So please reach out to him at info@sustainabilitytoolbox.com. Next month, as he described, we start a new series with the Australian NOC digging further into this topic at the level of the sports federations. So that's really exciting. And again, getting our arms collectively around more influence and more change. Along with ANOC, we encourage you to continue to share your journey, and we would love to have your examples of your work to share as case studies, both on the Toolbox website and on the ANOC resource pages. So yeah, again, thank you to the full team. It's been a wonderful job of presenting this framework. And in return for your efforts, for their efforts, we would like to ask you please to reply to the questionnaire that Isaac and Gustavo are going to, and Andres are going to share with you. We might just bring that up on the screen right now. And while that's on the screen, just to show you where it is, I will also just mention that as you prepare for your next General Assembly later in the year, I think the intention is to feature a few of the NOCs who feel they have benefited from this workshop series. So please indicate your interest to Andres, Gustavo, or Isaac, if that is the case. And we can, share a little bit of this, your sustainability journey going forward at your next AGM. Anyway, thank you. This has been amazing. And back to maybe Gustavo or Andres to wrap up.
Thanks, Damien. And first of all, we would like to thank the Toolbox team. We think it has been a fantastic journey throughout these past months. Isaac, Amy, everybody, Ingrid, I think you did a fantastic job. This is very overwhelming for the NOCs that it was for ANOC for the beginning. We wish you had the Toolbox earlier because it does facilitate a lot the journey on sustainability. And also, I would like to thank the NOCs for sticking with us. We know it's not easy. It's a lot of work besides all of the work that you already have to do. So thank you very much. And also to emphasize that the Toolbox is a partnership that doesn't end here, but it continues. So the teams is always making themselves continually available and to exchange experiences, continue to learn. We were very happy to hear from Isaac that over 200 people from National Olympic Committees joined the platform. We are very happy with this number. So we're really confident that this will trail a smoother way for the NOCs on their sustainability path. As mentioned before, ANOC and the IOC and also with the Toolbox, we're going to continue to think on future activities. As Damien mentioned, the GA is a key moment for us to share. And we want to know which are the results of these workshops. And if you were able to put that into place and share that, it is very important. The feedback form, Andres is showing there with you. For us, it's really, really important that you fill it out. As you can see, it's not a huge form. It won't take a lot of your time, but it's really strategic for us that you fill it out. Just to finalize, so sustainability is key for the protection of our planet and the continuation of sport as we know today. And the Olympic movement really needs to take it on board and do its part. We really need to focus on reduce, mitigate, and promote it as much as we can. And with that, I finalize. Thank you very, very much. Thank Andres and all of the ANOC team and the interpreters who were with us throughout this journey. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.